of migrants at the southern U.S. border wearing T-shirts which read, "Biden, please let us in," signaling that we may be about to experience a very severe migrant crisis. Axios is reporting that the crisis we are facing could be worse than the ones faced by Trump and Obama. Now, Biden has promised to allow more refugees into the country. People are critical of this because they feel it may incentivize migrants to go on this dangerous journey only to reach the border and be denied. The left is angry because Joe Biden is now operating child detention centers. In fact, he even is reopening the facility that Donald Trump closed in Miami. They were screaming that Trump was putting kids in cages. Well, the facility in Homestead, Florida, was opened by Obama, and it was Trump that shut it down. But now it's the Biden administration that is going to bring it back. On the right, they're angry because Joe Biden is promising to allow way more refugees in. He's shutting down border wall projects. And we're now learning that about 100 migrants, more than 100, who may have been infected with COVID were released in Texas. The reason that's significant is because recently Texas announced they would be reopening business. They felt the vaccine and social distancing were working, and thus they could get the economy back on track. Joe Biden responded by saying it was Neanderthal thinking. Well, now many people are upset on the right for this. Some are suggesting that we should introduce new legislation to complete Donald Trump's border wall, and they've actually done this. But how hypocritical is it to say we're going to allow migrants in? They've not been tested for COVID. Some who actually have been infected with COVID were released, but Texas is the state that's doing things wrong. It's hypocritical because Joe Biden said we will not have normalcy until this time next year, but he seems to be just tribally attacking certain states. It makes no sense to demand COVID lockdowns in a state where you wouldn't actually enforce COVID restrictions on those crossing the border. Well, now I think we're going to see that Joe Biden is not up to the job. He's going to get heat from the left and the right worse than he already is. And like I said, Axios is saying this is going to be one of the worst migrant crises we have ever seen. Well, let's read this and see what's going on first with the migrants wearing these T-shirts. Before we do, head over to timcast.com, become a member to get access to exclusive Timcast IRL podcast segments and episodes. We have a whole bunch of content. Look at this. We got Sydney Watson, James O'Keefe. We got the guy from Phoenix Ammunition, Blair White. We set up timcast.com because there is a purge going on. They're censoring people. They're banning people. And in the event my channels get shut down, this is where you will be able to find information. You'll be able to find my content. And we're looking to expand. Your membership gets you all this content. And we're even going to be having live events at our studio. So make sure you sign up to get information on when that's going to happen. And it's going to be happening relatively soon as the weather is warming up. But let's read the first story. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Fox 10 Phoenix reports. Migrants wear Biden T-shirts at U.S.-Mexico border, demand clearer policies. They say migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border on Tuesday were photographed wearing T-shirts in support of President Biden at the San Isidro crossing port in Tijuana, Baja California state. One apparent migrant held up a poster that read, "Biden, please let us in." Prospective U.S. residents and progressive Democrats are hoping the new president will implement more lenient immigration policies than former President Trump, though some politicians like Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have expressed concern with Biden's use of migrant holding facilities at the border. There has been a recent surge in the number of unaccompanied minors arriving at the U.S. border from Mexico, according to the Wall Street Journal, though the Biden administration has rejected the term crisis to describe the situation. The president is working to process as many as 25,000 asylum seekers who were forced to wait in Mexico under the Trump administration's Remain in Mexico policy under the Migrant Protection Protocol program. Biden has promised to accept more refugees into the country during his time in office and implement more humane policies, such as a proposal to pay for the transportation and healthcare costs of migrant families who were separated at the border under the Trump administration. Congressional Democrats in February introduced Biden-backed immigration legislation that includes a path to citizenship for an estimated 11 million immigrants who are already residing in the U.S. illegally. It also includes expanded distribution of automatic green cards to immigrants with temporary protected status, as well as deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA recipients, and a plan to give $4 billion to Central American countries in an effort to target the root causes for migration into the U.S. I'm sorry, but I don't believe this is a solution. Giving $4 billion to these countries does not incentivize them to stop the problem. It incentivizes them to keep the problem going. As people flee these countries and try and go on these arduous journeys, you have several pull factors, as they refer to them. One, Joe Biden promising to naturalize 11 million refugees or offer a path to naturalization, as well as saying he will accept more asylum seekers, just means many people are going to say, I will take my chances. The danger? Many of these people lose their lives on these journeys. These are not simple. It is not a simple task to make this trek. Most of them do not get in. Most asylum seekers are rejected, and they're incentivizing this. The second pull factor is offering these countries billions of dollars. They're going to say, hey, so long as the crisis exists, then we can keep saying, oh, but we need more money to get the problem solved. In the end, we are now dealing with the crisis again, a crisis that Obama dealt with, that Trump dealt with, and what now Joe Biden is going to be dealing with. It doesn't seem like what Obama and Biden has done is working. Under Donald Trump, at the very least, he did disincentivize the behavior. But to be fair, it didn't work all that well either. You could argue that with Joe Biden now incentivizing these people to come here, offering a path to citizenship and asylum, he's only making the problem worse, and that may be. From Axios, one big thing, Biden's building crisis, they say. 6 weeks into his presidency, President Biden is staring down a mounting crisis at the border that could be just as bad as the ones faced by Obama and Trump, if not worse. Why it matters. Immigration is an issue that can consume a presidency. It's intensely and poisonously partisan. It's complicated, and the lives and welfare of vulnerable children hang in the balance. In an attempt at a solution, the Biden administration now plans to release parents and children within 72 hours of arriving in the U.S., a new policy that already is being carried out along the Texas border, according to the New York Times. Biden came into office sounding a warmer, more welcoming policy that would treat migrants humanely. Desperate people took notice. And Biden reversed Trump's COVID-era policy of turning away unaccompanied children, the very group that is now surging. They say shelters are overflowing, border crossings are rising, border patrol facilities are overwhelmed, and the new administration is taking fire from both the left and the right. There are still roughly 3 months left of what is usually the peak season for migrants coming to the U.S.-Mexico border. My friends, it is only going to get worse. They also talk about vaccine tourism, but we can maybe touch on this later. The important factor here from the New York Post, 108 illegal immigrants in Texas who tested positive for COVID reportedly released. This has the people of Texas in an uproar. At a time when they're trying to reopen, what does Biden's federal administration do? CBP under Biden, they released sick people into the state. Now that is dangerously irresponsible. Some feel like it was almost a kind of retaliation. Because Texas wanted to reopen, the federal government was like, okay, well, then here you go, some sick people. I don't think that's the case, to be honest. I think it's just, I don't know, ineptitude is probably the best way to put it. Joe Biden is not up to this task of dealing with CBP, with ICE, these other federal organizations. He's in desperate need of help to get this job done. And I think it's evident by the fact that the left and the right are angry with him. At least under Trump, the right was like, Trump's doing what I want him to do. He's building a border wall. He's disincentivizing this behavior. Right now on the left and the right, they're saying Biden is failing at everything. As I mentioned, the left is really angry over the child migrant dilemma. As Axios reports, leaked HHS docs spotlight Biden's child migrant dilemma, saying, fresh internal documents from the Department of Health and Human Services show how quickly the number of child migrants crossing the border is overwhelming the administration's stretched resources. Perhaps they should have done what Trump did, turn them away. I know it may sound inhumane, but these young people, these unaccompanied minors, may be better off near these border towns in Mexico than wandering through mass stretches of desert in the U.S., where they can become sick, ill, and die. We do not have the resources to keep them safe, and we can't tell them, if you come in, so be it, because then more will come, and it will only get worse. To Biden's credit, perhaps there is at least an attempt at solving the problem in their home countries. But offering up aid does not seem to work. It seems like the corrupt politicians in these countries are incentivized. They say, great, the more people who leave, the more money we get. And in the end, people will just keep going on these dangerous journeys. They say, driving the news. In the week ending March 1st, the Border Patrol referred to HHS custody an average of 321 children per day, according to documents obtained by Axios. That's up from a weekly average of 203 in late January and early February, and just 47 per day during the first week of January. Now, could it be the 47 per week in January were due to Donald Trump not allowing these people to enter the country? I would say the answer is yes. Though some people may say, yeah, but it's winter, Tim. It's winter. They're not going to. It's winter, but it's the southern border. Don't act like it's snowing. Okay, hold on. It did snow down there. There was a serious winter storm. So, okay, maybe. But for the most part, people who are going on these journeys, they're going to come if the opportunity exists. As many people were hearing Joe Biden say on the debate stage and during his campaign, moratorium on deportation, open border policies, not totally open border, but decriminalizing border crossings. How many of these people said, now's my chance? Get there right at the start of the line, January 20th, a new Joe Biden president, and boom, we'll be right there ready to go, and he's going to let us in. Where did these T-shirts come from? The ones that say, Biden, please let us in. Who mass printed these T-shirts and then gave them out to these people? Maybe they did it themselves. Perhaps not like it's that expensive to do. But you have to wonder. They are trying, the people who are coming here, in my opinion, they're trying to manipulate us. And it's going to work on the left. Sorry, you can't tug at my heartstrings. I actually want to make sure we can protect people. That includes the migrants and refugees, but it also includes the people who live in Texas, the people who are locking down, the people who have suffered under the COVID pandemic because their businesses were shuttered. We can't just allow anybody to come in. Sorry. It will only make it worse for everyone. But you know what? Wearing those shirts, it's going to trigger the emotions in many Democrats who are low information voters. Sorry, I know there may be Democrats who listen, but that's just the reality. It is an emotional manipulation to say, please let us in. These poor people. I understand you may have a gut instinct to say we need to let these people in. But that doesn't solve the problem, and it potentially makes it worse for everyone. I know people don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it, but it's the truth. And if you really want to help these people, we need to do something for them back home. So maybe Joe Biden will do something with these grants. I think they need to actually go in and enforce that the use of this money goes to the right causes. I'm not entirely convinced it will. They go on to say in Axios, the same documents dated Tuesday say the shelter system is at 94% occupancy and expected to reach its maximum this month. Well, there you go. Joe Biden has kids in cages, and it's going to be worse than what happened with Trump. They say, meanwhile, some of President Biden's top officials responsible for immigration policy are planning a trip to the U.S.-Mexico border this weekend, sources tell Axios. The influx of unaccompanied minors is a mushrooming problem for the new president and his policy and social welfare agencies. Quote, a trip is not finalized, and the White House continues to work on locking in details and logistics for a potential visit. White House spokesperson Vedant Patel told Axios. Spokesperson for DHS and HHS did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Behind the scenes, they say HHS has already moved to open overflow shelters and to increase the speed with which it releases children to caretakers already in the U.S. In the week ending March 1st, an average of 174 children were released from HHS custody each day. That was up from a weekly average of 90 in late June and early February, according to the documents. Nonetheless, the number of migrants held in Border Patrol custody longer than 3 days has been rising nearly each day, according to additional documents reviewed by Axios. Kids and teens caught crossing the border without legal guardians are being held in Border Patrol facilities for more than 3 days for an average of 77 hours, as CNN first reported. This week, DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas insisted the current situation is not yet a crisis. Regardless, it's clear the number of children crossing the U.S.-Mexico border could fast overwhelm government systems in ways similar to the crises in 2014 and 2019. The uptick comes while the administration continues to use an emergency public health order to quickly deport migrant adults and some families, including asylum seekers. At the same time, Biden has reversed a Trump administration policy of using the public health order to quickly turn away unaccompanied children. The source, who provided the internal Biden administration documents, expects to see family migration rise over the next months as well. Internally, government officials have been sounding alarm bells. As Axios previously reported, DHS is expecting a record number of child migrants this year. HHS has told the White House it will need a 20,000 bed capacity to humanely accommodate them. I'm sorry, the only thing that's going to happen is that Joe Biden will expand kids in cages. But listen, I'm not here to rag on Biden for that. They went after Trump saying it was inhumane and it was a problem. Well, it was Obama's facilities. But the reality is we do need them. We can't just cut kids loose into the desert, send them to people we don't know. That's why we have these facilities. Nobody wants these kids to suffer. Maybe a few people in the Trump administration or the Obama or Biden, maybe there's a few people you can call out. Some of them probably worthy of criticism. But for the most part, people want to make sure these kids are not getting sick and dying. That's the purpose of these facilities. I think too many people on the left are manipulated by their emotions. And they're going to just say the kids shouldn't be there. Well, where do they go? Well, they say they shouldn't have been separated from their families. How do you know it was their actual family? If an adult is taking a child across the border, how do you know? And what do? Just say, well, here's a guy with a little girl. I guess it's fine. What if that's not his child? What if he's a trafficker? There are many of them. They exist. The Guardian writes an opinion piece for The Guardian. Biden is locking up migrant children. Will the world still care with Trump gone? They say flowers, butterflies, and a rosy banner saying bienvenidos decorate the child detention site. Is that meant to fool us into thinking this is humane? That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. There's a funny meme. Under Obama, it's like child holding center. Under Trump, kids in cages. Under Biden, child holding center once again. Well, at least Mustafa Bayoumi for The Guardian is pointing out that it's an awful development, saying, reminding me of some of the worst abuses of the Trump years. And while we obviously don't know how this ominous development will play out in the long run, what we do know is this. Unaccompanied migrant children deserve compassion, not detention. But rather than seeking out new and better solutions, the Biden administration is instead trying to sell us an image of a kinder, gentler imprisonment. I ask you, good sir, I appreciate the consistency, but I ask you, where should these children go? Seriously, is it more humane to just keep them in the desert? It makes no sense. When Trump was operating these facilities, sure, they weren't perfect. They were overwhelmed. It was kind of bad. But these kids are coming here. Separating them, I think, is scary. But again, trafficking. What do? I believe it is appropriate for Joe Biden to have these children in these facilities. They put them in bunk beds. They try and take care of them. And the same was true for Donald Trump. It is absurdly naive to think you just say, you know what? Fine. The left is angry. Open the floodgates. Let everybody come in. And the kids have fun and good luck in the desert. That's insane. There was a story not that long ago about a kid who was taken in by ICE. I believe it may have been CBP. The kid died. And the media tried framing it as though it was Border Patrol that killed the kid. No, they tried saving the kid. They found the kid wandering in the desert. Kid was sick. They brought the kid into the facility hoping to get some medical treatment. The kid died. They blamed Border Patrol. What should have happened? Should they have just left him in the desert saying, hey, if we pick you up, the Democrats are going to get mad at us? Well, of course not. They should try and save him. And therein lies the double-edged sword. No matter what you do, you lose. You try and save the kid, they blame you for it. You don't save the kid, they still blame you for it. No matter what you do, they will say it is bad. February 11th, President Biden cancels funding for Trump's border wall. This was big news. The BBC says, in a letter to Congress on Thursday, Mr. Biden wrote that the order was unwarranted and said that no further tax dollars will be spent on the wall. Mr. Trump declared a state of emergency over the southern border in 2019, which allowed him to bypass Congress and use military funds for its construction. When Mr. Trump left office, about $15 billion had been spent on the project. The announcement from President Biden is the latest in a series of executive orders that have rolled back key parts of the former president's agenda. And when he does that, people then rush to the border thinking we can now get in. Joe Biden is failing at this. Desperate to please these Democrats, it seems like some of his policies are hoping to make the left happy while he's simultaneously just doing all the awful things they complain about. They're not going to support him. It's either all or nothing. Either Joe Biden says, I stand by my decisions no matter what, or he gives into the left, but you can't do both. They say in a letter on Thursday, Biden wrote that he would also seek a review of all resources appropriated or redirected to the construction of the wall. Building a border wall was one of Trump's signatures, but the project faced strong opposition. An emergency declaration allows U.S. presidents to circumvent the usual political process and to access military funding. Well, I tell you this, I mentioned the left and the right are mad. The right isn't doing nothing. From SarahCarter.com, Texas state rep introduces bill to finish Trump's border wall. They report, amid a tense national debate over the U.S.-Mexico border, a Texas lawmaker is pushing for the construction of former President Donald Trump's border wall to continue. Since President Biden took office in January, he has signed a slew of executive orders that reverse many of Trump's policies. One of those orders includes striking down the ongoing construction of the southern border wall. Texas State Rep. Brian Slatton has introduced legislation before the Texas House to finish President Trump's wall in Texas. Further, the bill seeks to name the wall after Trump, tweeting, "We all know Biden has opened the floodgates at our border. That's why today I have filed HB 2862 to finish President Trump's wall in Texas. If the federal government won't do its job protecting American citizens, then Texas will stand in the gap and do it for them." Quote, President Trump fought to bring real border security and was opposed by Republicans and Democrats in Congress. While hundreds of miles of new wall were built under his leadership, the Biden administration has already ceased border wall construction. Slatton said in a press release, "It is time for Texas to stand up and finish the work Trump has started." Sarah Carter is reported from the border wall they mentioned for Fox News. And good work on that part, Sarah. Now, what did Joe Biden say to Texas when it came to COVID? Neanderthal thinking. Montana governor says Biden degraded himself with Neanderthal comment about red state governors. Gianforte says Biden's name calling makes no sense at all. Probably pronouncing this wrong. Gianforte explained that hospitalizations are down and Montana is open for business during an appearance on Fox and Friends, asserting that a one-size-fits-all approach to coronavirus mandates doesn't make sense for the needs of every state. For a president that called for unity to degrade himself to name-calling doesn't make any sense at all. And he's right. This was in response to many states, notably Texas, deciding to reopen. Well, I bring you back to the story from the New York Post about sick migrants. They say, Felipe Romero, a spokesman for the border city of Brownsville, told Fox News they are telling the migrants who tested positive to follow the CDC guidelines to quarantine and maintain social distance, but that Brownsville doesn't have the authority to stop them from traveling to the rest of the country. He said the 108 positives account for 6.3% of the total migrants who received rapid tests at the city's main bus terminal, a program that began on January 25th. Some of the migrants described to Noticias Telemundo Investigia how they were tested at the border and then allowed to hit the streets despite a positive result for the virus. The left has been saying that this COVID has been horribly mismanaged and that the migrant crisis has been horribly mismanaged. No, they're right. The fact that there's no, straightforward plan as to what we should be doing. The fact that Joe Biden is being completely hypocritical, it doesn't bode well for us. But my friends, perhaps there is hope for all of you. You see, Donald Trump is back, issuing a statement saying, out of control immigration and border security. The Boston Herald reports, former President Donald Trump, via his 45 office mail drop, slammed the Biden administration's immigration stance Friday, saying security is totally out of control. Here is the unedited statement of the president. They say, quote, our border, and this is from Donald Trump, our border is now totally out of control thanks to the disastrous leadership of Joe Biden. Our great border patrol and ICE agents have been disrespected, demeaned, and mocked by the Biden administration. A mass incursion into the country by people who should not be here is happening on an hourly basis, getting worse by the minute. Many have criminal records, and many others have and are spreading COVID. Interior enforcement has been shut down. Criminals that were once promptly removed by our administration are now being released back onto the street to commit heinous and violent crimes. ICE officers are desperate to remove these convicted criminals, but Biden won't let them. The spiraling tsunami at the border is overwhelming local communities, depleting budgets, crowding hospitals, and taking jobs from legal American workers. When I left office, we'd achieved the most secure border in our country's history. Under Biden, it will soon be worse, more dangerous, and more out of control than ever before. He has violated his oath of office to uphold our Constitution and enforce our laws. There has never been a time on our southern border like what is happening now, but more importantly, what is about to happen. Now that Biden has implemented nationwide catch and release, illegal immigrants from every corner of the earth will descend upon our border and never be returned. You can never have a secure border unless people who cross illegally are promptly removed. I had a great relationship with Mexico and its wonderful president, but all of that has been dissipated by the gross incompetence and radicalism of the people currently in charge. The Remain in Mexico policy was incredible, but immediately abandoned by Biden, probably because it worked so well. Likewise, our safe third agreements in Central America were extraordinarily successful, so Biden foolishly ditched them too. We stopped payment of the hundreds of millions of dollars paid to them and then developed an excellent relationship that made our country and their countries more secure. We put in place powerful rules and procedures to stop the smuggling and trafficking. But the Biden administration has abandoned these proven strategies and instead given the smugglers and traffickers effective control of our border. Despite being delayed by years of litigation and politics by the Democrats, the wall is almost finished and can be quickly completed. Doing so will save thousands of dollars. The Biden administration must act immediately to end the border nightmare that they have unleashed onto our nation. Keep illegal immigration, crime, and the China virus out of our country. Quote from Donald Trump. Trump is not going away. I think it's very likely he runs, but I don't know. He'll be a pretty old man by 2024. Probably will announce in 2023 if he does, campaign throughout 23 and 24. And then, of course, if he wins, inaugurated on January 2025. I think it's entirely possible that happens. You know why? The left and the right are mad. They don't like what Joe Biden is doing. If Donald Trump runs, then it will just be the left that is mad, and the right will like the idea of a President Trump. But think about all of the regular Americans. You see, it's not just immigration. There are a bunch of other issues. Food prices are going up, inflation. A lot of people are not getting back to work. Joe Biden says, wait till next year. And a lot of people don't want to. Many people were promised $2,000 checks. Perhaps those people voted for Joe Biden thinking he would honor it. Donald Trump wanted $2,000 checks. And it was the Republicans who said no. You know what that means? It means the establishment has to go. It was widely popular among Trump supporters and progressives. In fact, I think the poll was 84% of people said $2,000 checks. So why didn't we get them? Both Democrats and Republicans are saying no. So what happens then, in my opinion, is that you will see many moderate voters realizing that Joe Biden was the wrong choice. And in the coming years, there are many variables. So this is a very bold thing to try and predict now. So I'll probably be wrong. Considering that I'll probably be wrong, I will just go ahead and say many people will likely be upset with Joe Biden's policies. After spending 4 years in crisis after crisis with an inflating U.S. dollar, people struggling to work and to get back to work. While I may be wrong, I got to make sure I say that, people just may be fed up. And you'll find that with record voter turnout, like we saw, in 2020, people just narrowly go for Donald Trump because they'll say, you know what? It was better under Trump. The economy was great. And like they say, it's the economy, stupid. I don't know for sure, but they've certainly done Trump many favors by taking away his social media. One of the biggest mistakes Trump was routinely making was tweeting bombastic things that was pissing people off. Now that's gone. Now he can only put out these official statements through email, which still make it to the press. The media is desperate for Trump, And now Trump's weakness has been taken away. I know social media benefited him in a lot of ways, but it did hurt him in a lot of ways as well. He just needed to be quiet sometimes and let the news cycle chill out, but he couldn't do it. He still can't. He's putting out these emails, but these emails are much better controlled. So what happens in 2025? Maybe a narrow Trump victory as he comes out and speaks out against Joe Biden. Maybe then the left finally snaps because they need their boogeyman, they need their villain, and then something worse happens. I don't know. I'll probably be wrong. As I say, it's a bold prediction to make this far out, years and years out. So we'll see how Biden does. But he seems to be doing miserably as of right now. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. We're going to be talking about China and that looming threat and whether or not Joe Biden is up to the task. And guess what? I think he isn't. So I'll leave it there, and we will see you all at 8 p.m. tonight at youtube.com/TimcastIRL.